Obviously, many of them will fail, some of them will succeed, but they all fit, I think, within this broader context of what's happening within consumer electronics. So let's start with the digitization of our physical space. You're looking here at a photo I took of a sensor, and it's a sensor that probably many of us recognize. It's a motion sensor, and it's used on what looks like just a regular urinal. You can see it's actually plugged into the wall, so you can see it getting powered. Something we pretty much take for granted. Just take, we see it all the time. We see these sensors all the time. We use them to flush toilets and open doors and turn on lights. What's interesting, though, is that this photo is one I took 2 years ago when I was in Ethiopia. So here's a country where about half the houses don't have electricity. And in this village that I was in, I would say many of the houses didn't have electricity. And yet, in this house, in this building, they had electricity, and they were using it to power a pretty mundane sensor, something that we viewed as just a common, everyday, inexpensive sensor. And it was clear to me when I saw this that we were moving into an environment where we were going to start to see wide deployment of sensors, not just in our smartphones, but in everyday objects around us. And that we were going to start to digitize this physical space, that we're going to start to digitize information that was already there, but that wasn't necessarily being captured in a very systematic way. So we start to do things like put it on surfboards. I've shown this photo before. You can see the sensor unit there on the front. Now, all that information was already there. It already existed. How fast he was going, wave height, where his bottom turn was, how long his ride was, all of his speed. All that was information that already existed. It just wasn't being captured in a very systematic way. It wasn't being captured in a continuous way. So we start to deploy sensors, we embed sensors into that experience, and then we can start to capture all of that information, digitize it, and ultimately use it. And I'll talk about the importance of that there in a minute. This is from last year's CES. It's the Mimo baby onesie. It looks like just a regular onesie, but the difference is it's connected to the internet. So the green stripes across the chest measure breathing, and you can see the little turtle on its hip. That's where all the sensors sit. So it has a digital temperature sensor, measures the temperature around the baby. It has an accelerometer and a gyroscope, so it can tell whether the baby's awake or asleep, whether it's on its stomach or whether it's on its back. It has a digital microphone. It has Bluetooth connectivity, so it can essentially be a baby monitor, connects to your smartphone. The green stripes allow it to measure breathing, so it can tell you when it's breathing or not. So we're starting to digitize that physical space around the baby, digitizing it around the room, we're digitizing it around. And as I look at some of the trends we've seen at CES for decades, I mean, for those of you who have come to CES for many years, we've been talking about smart home literally for decades. But at its root, the smart home is about the digitization of our physical space. And I think one of the reasons why it's starting to catch on today is because all of these pieces have come together now, which are facilitating that transition to the next stage, but also because of this bigger picture of digitizing our physical space. And the key to all of this is that we're taking something that's happening in the physical space, we're then digitizing it, and ultimately for that to be meaningful, for that to be useful, we have to then have it influence, again, the physical space. So simply digitizing it isn't enough. And we're going to see a number of products this week that are digitizing something in the physical space. And it's not enough. It really comes down to what the use case scenario looks like. I think one of the inflection points we're at with respect to technology is that we're moving beyond just showing that something is technologically possible, that it's technologically feasible. We're now moving into an environment where we take that as granted, we accept that it's technologically possible, and now we say, is it technologically meaningful? Does it matter? What's the use case scenario look like? So those, to me, are the questions to ask. Not can we do it, but should we do it? About 4% or so of things that might one day be digitized are today digitized. So there is obviously a significant amount of things left to be digitized and connected and sensorized. Now the question is, should we do it?